Hey Anderson, how are you?
Good, Ken. How are you?
Good. I start this with everybody that I talk to. What does the word Vietnamese mean to you?
Means basically who I am, where my family's from. Um, so yeah, I mean, it means basically uh, diaspora community that I'm very involved in the sense of like I have many friends who are Vietnamese and Vietnamese American. Um, I know growing up in Hawaii, I wasn't like I was Vietnamese, but I didn't really practice like I would say being Vietnamese in the sense that because the community was very small. As regarding my immediate family, which is us here in Hawaii, and my aunt, right, and everyone else, all of my other relatives were pretty much on the mainland or around the world. But in the sense that as in through adulthood and through my I guess career in film festivals, I think it was like just kind of that's how I kind of rekindled my I guess like my roots or my culture, so to speak, by going back to Vietnam and then kind of like getting into the and really much so getting into that community of overseas Vietnamese who are working in the film industry. Um, and then became making dear friends and business partners essentially and kind of delving into that space.
You were born May 4th, right?
No, May 6th.
May 6th, I'm sorry. May
Yeah,
6th,
yeah,
1975. You
yes.
are
Yeah, you gave me my age,
sorry.
man. Thanks. No
Sorry.
worries. That's all right. I'm good.
Okay, well
I
it's
don't. Okay. Yes. I think it's significant to what your follow up question is. Yes.
yeah, it's very
1975.
75,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
May 6th, 1975. That's a few days, little bit over a week um, after the mass exodus. You were born basically on the plane over
Right.
to the
Mass
U.S.,
Exodus. You're
right?
talking about like the fall of Saigon, basically,
Yeah.
right? And yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Okay.
So you were on a plane.
Yeah.
Your
So
mother
my
had to fly.
parents were lucky enough to um they were able to get get on a plane Pan Am flight um, to the U.S. and my mom was like 9 months pregnant with me. I think we started out. We went to the Philippines, just to basic refuel for a few days, and we're able to um, immediately go on basic refuel the plane and go head to the U.S. and we're on our way to Arkansas, right? Because I mean, a lot of my other relatives, like my aunts and uncles and their families, were already in the U.S. Already established. Well, not just already established in the Midwest and the South, and Utah. Two or three of my aunts, and we were supposed to be on our way there to Arkansas, right? But my mom's water broke on the plane, and so we had over the Pacific, and so we had to they had to land the ground the flight in Honolulu. And if you've been to flown into Honolulu airport, you'll see on the side of a mountain, not very far, like this very big pink building, and that's Tripper Hospital, and that's like the Army hospital, right? Uh, and yeah, my mom and dad were rushed there, and I was born on in Tripler Hospital in Honolulu, and
I have a
because basically, uh, oh, go ahead.
no, I have
Yeah,
a really bad habit of asking people, especially around our generation, when their birthday was, because I want to know. I always am curious of who was the first baby to be born in the U.S. after the fall of Saigon, and I haven't met anybody who's been born before you, like April 29th, April 30th, April, um, anywhere in that ballpark of a week, basically, that you were born. So I would consider you probably the first baby born in, well, in the U.S. That has significance of where you're born in Hawaii because the vast majority of the rest of the Vietnamese American children that came to the continental U.S. and life for us was a little bit different. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like to grow up in Hawaii because it's predominantly Asian?
Sure. So, like, I mean, just like continuing that my story, like basically the story of my birth, like, uh, uh, yeah, baby Jesus. No, just kidding. No, I mean, like, so like basically, I was born in Honolulu, and but in like, I had jaundice. I was like, you know, yellow on yellow, but so I had to be basically, those like the square, like those like glass boxes, right? And like under like the, like how like you go to 7-Eleven, like fried chicken or spring rolls are like are kept warm. Basically, that was me, right? That was kept warm under this like for like 10 days, and so like my parents obviously were there, and then my dad I think there was excitement as my dad tells me amongst the hospital staff because my parents were like the first Vietnamese refugees. Obviously, the fall of Saigon was like maybe 10 days or prior, right, or something like that. And so they basically all the hospital staff just basically literally um, put out a hat, and people were just donating money because
Wow.
my parents had nothing on, just off the clothes, just literally this clothes off their back, right? And then my dad was just noticing. Um, like you're like, wow, the weather here is like, oh, it's just like Vietnam, like it's like very it's like tropical, and like it's like that's kind of like and also the fact that he knows a lot of Asian faces, he knows a lot of Asian faces. There's like like, oh, America is supposed to be just white people, right?
Wow.
So like I think so they were given the choice like to continue onwards, to continue the journey to Arkansas, or stay in Hawaii. And because I was born in U.S. soil, I think they had the choice, right? So my dad said, "Yeah, let's just stay here." I mean, they were the only one. They had no family attachments in Hawaii or anything like that. It's like all the family, like was basically on the continent, right? Like in the Midwest and the
Mhm.
South.
W-
Um,
Were you
yeah,
guys the first Vietnamese family there?
no, I don't think so. No. But I mean, just maybe more so in the sense that uh, I'm sure there were other families here in Hawaii through other means, but I mean, I think just with like your like life is like you're the hero in your story, your narrative, right? So I think in our family that was our story. So, but I mean, I'm sure it was. There's just like just because of circumstances, we were definitely one of the first.
Within the all the Asian faces in Hawaii, as you were growing up as a kid, did you ever get made fun of or bullied for being Vietnamese? Because on the mainland we just got bullied for being Asian, and there was no distinction. There was like ching ching chong this, but it was nobody really understood who the hell you were, or where the fuck you came from.
I don't remember. I don't remember. No, no. I would say no. Um, no, I mean, because I think like yeah, in Hawaii, it was basically, especially as an Asian kid, Asian American kid, it was just like that was just you were basically you're basically the majority, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, honestly, I just like, and this is like I grew up in the late '70s and '80s, and I just remember like my going to the beach. That's what we did, right, in the weekend, and like I remember I have a distinct memory of you know basically these guys they were. I mean, I don't know if they were Hawaiian. They were definitely brown, right? Um, and then they were chasing after this white guy and beating him up, trying to beat him up and stuff like that. And I just remember they were very going after him, and like the white guy basically ran over this family's blanket full of stuff, right? And like they were chasing him, and like one of the guys stopped and like, "Are you guys okay? Oh, I'm so sorry," and picked up their stuff and then continued to run over to chase after the white guy. And I mean, growing up in school, like in elementary school, I remember one or two times there was like, kill Howley Day. We basically, we picked, basically bullies picked on like, a random uh, white kid,
What kid?
and white is like, is Howley, right?
Yep.
Is in kind of Hawaii vernacular, right? So yeah, I mean, like it's like, I mean, all of my teachers. I mean, there's a all of my teachers, elementary school teachers, are all like Japanese women. You know, uh, I know it's like, like it was mostly all women. I mean, that was just the '70s, in a way. So, but yeah, I mean, our governor was Japanese.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, it's like, I had neighbors who were Hawaiian, Chinese, uh, you know, mixed, just definitely mixed, a lot of mixed. That was Hawaii. That's Hawaii for you. I mean, the word hapa, you know, is comes from Hawaii and Hawaii culture. So that was kind of like just kind of just everyday life,
Yeah. What does hapa mean?
and reflection of that. It means like, I think it means a Hawaiian word, and it's adopted in a sense, and it's kind of controversial now because it's, in the sense that, it's Hapa is half Hawaiian, like you're Hawaiian and another kind of ethnicity, right? But it's kind of been adopted, especially by like um, mixed, of Asian descent. Usually, when you think of Hapa, you think of uh, something like Asian or something else and white, right? And but I think it's just like, just been misused, in a sense. If you're mixed, you're just, you're mixed, right? But I mean, not necessarily mean you're Hapa, right?
Right.
Just like, like yeah. I mean, it's just like the differences of Latino and Hispanic, right? So
Right. Right. So,
yeah, yeah.
you decided to go to undergrad on the mainland, right? Or was it in Hawaii?
No, I started off in Hawaii, at the University of Hawaii, but I did go to the continent. For I went to Arizona State University for a bit. Yeah,
Did
and
did
then
you
yeah.
did you get to visit growing up the continental U.S.?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I
Yep.
had like, again, my family, like relatives and stuff like that, and family friends all lived on the the Midwest. So or the South. So we'd go to summers and spend times in Missouri, or Utah. Um, my family friends in Southern California. So, I distinctly remember my first trip to Disneyland and Universal Studios, and I was probably like 8 years old or something like that. But I distinctly remember going mostly to kind of this, to Missouri and Utah, because my parents came from very big families. Like my mom was the youngest of 15 kids, and my dad was the youngest son of like 10. So,
Did
but
you
we were
did you
close
have
to some relatives versus others. Obviously there's relatives I've never met before,
yeah?
right? So,
Did you have did you have early recollections of like the difference of, we're in America, but it's different in Hawaii versus, Missouri or Arkansas?
oh yeah, everything. Sensory. I mean, just from just observations, like, there's a lot of white people or a lot of non-Asian people. I mean, we spoke. Hey, I mean, my cousins always joked like we spoke funny, because we had like this, local or pidgin kind of accent. We would tease each other. They would go. They would always joke around that we always say at the end, always say yeah, 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 and I would joke back at them and like, you always say golly, golly, like it's like,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean the food, I mean, from the food to the weather, it's very sensory. Yeah, definitely. It's like, oh wow, the roads are bigger. There's a lot more space. I mean the food is different. I remember like, I mean this is um in Salt Lake City, like, my aunt made pho for us, and like and I was like, oh, like but, this is like, you know there weren't like Asian markets, like back in the day, or they're very
Right.
small, remote, or something like that, right? So yeah, they like they would use Tabasco to like to just basically eat. I was like, oh, okay, but but stuff like that. I think is like yeah, it was a different time for sure.
So strange. What about the treatment that would you experience treatment from the white community when you would go visit people in Salt Lake or Missouri, Arkansas? Was there a distinct difference? Because now you're in Howley Land, right? You're in a world that's not predominantly Asian. Was there? Did you feel a difference or not really?
I mean, are you talking about like racism or something like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not even distinctly racism, but just the feeling of being on the outside or being the other.
No, I mean, I was like young. I wasn't cognizant of stuff like that, And then also, like, like I had like cousins who were much older than I am. Like, like it was like 10, 15 years older. They were adults basically, and they their partners, their significant others were not Vietnamese. Either white or black, or and yeah, it was weird. I think it was. I just think of like I consider my cousins who are Vietnamese like mainlanders too. Like they were kind of all grouped together. In the sense like it's like uh like Southerners who like they on the weekends they go drink beer and go party at the lake to go like and stuff like that. Like, oh, okay, like it's like it's fine. It's like for me it's like, oh, it's no different from like just going to if it was Hawaii, going to the beach and doing that. So I just felt like it was just yeah, no, I think we weren't treated differently per se, and partly because we were kind of. I mean, I was very young, so my worldview is basically wherever my
Right.
parent took me, which were usually family gatherings or what have you. So
When you were in high school, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do with your life at that time?
uh, no, I mean I loved film,
Even that
I
early?
loved his. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I was a total geek. I was a total nerd. I just like I loved like Star Wars, Star Trek, summer movies, Batman, comic books, I was a name it. Like I was a denizen of like my local comic book shop, go to catch the bus to see, um, you know, movies constantly, like I just loved and also, just yeah, just
And your
video
family had
store, you name it.
a toy business in Honolulu.
Well, I like like a electronics video game toy store that yeah, my dad. Yeah, I mean, my dad was like a definitely an operator. He was like in the sense that like he would sell, go to the flea market or swap meet and sell random stuff. Like and it was just like there was no rhyme or reason to what he sold. It was like cutlery, pots, pans, toys, like samurai swords, you name it. Like it's like
Right.
knickknacks and what like pogs, like it's like I was like, like it's like okay, and then it kind of like, and then kind of and then when he opened up his store, it was just a random smattering of that. It wasn't like a drugstore or anything like that. It was just like whatever. And then like I think it's just because and then video games kind of it was like the time of Nintendo and Sega and like he went to his first like like kind of trade show, and then like like Nintendo was like blowing up, and so he just had a small kind of section on that, and it kind of grew like a virus, and it kind of took over. So
Wow.
yeah.
And so, all right, so you're finished with high school. You make a decision to go into college. You pick a major, and did you go into film right away at the time?
No, no, I never went to film school or anything like that. I just like I graduated with a degree in history. I actually double majored history and communications. So I was thinking like maybe something practical, like like going into telecommunications or something, like and or stuff like that. Like I had like interest in like maybe journalism or maybe even the news. Maybe as a reporter or maybe as a kind of producer in that sense. Or or going into teaching.
Right.
Yeah. So. Um, I mean, I'm terrible at math and I love science, but I'm terrible at math. I'm terrible, like like it's like so. Yeah, I just like oh yeah, it's just like the arts and like going to the arts or going to something else like the liberal arts was definitely more my bag.
Right. And then so when did you slowly start to make the transition into, working in the business?
I mean, I was, in Hawaii. I attended the Hawaii International Film Festival. And as a patron, right, as an audience member, and I just loved seeing films from all over the world. I remember seeing my first Vietnamese film.
Which
Like
one was it?
Vietnam film. Yeah, it was
Oh,
um, the Dang Nhat Minh film. When the 10th month comes, right? Black and white film was made in '84. Um, uh, Very much an anti-war film, um, and it just kind of blew my mind. I mean, because usually growing up, like it's like my exposure to kind of Vietnamese, kind of anything in language is basically just either the Chinese dubbed dramas
right.
on VHS that my parents watched, or like Paris by Night, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, I was like not into that any of that stuff, so um, and I think also maybe if I had seen that film at a younger age, I would have like just totally like no man, I was like into I was into grunge, I was into heavy metal grunge, like I was into like comic books, you name it, I was like that was not my yeah, that didn't spark my interest. So I think because I really discovered film, especially more art house and international films in college, and then that was like kind of my awakening, my cultural awakening, and when I saw that film, it kind of blew my mind, So um, yeah, so
I can imagine.
yeah, but anyway, going back to so that going to the film festival kind of like and going to just like I know like, you're going to like various classes like I did like like anywhere from like French literature to some political science or American studies. They all a lot of professors used film as part of the curriculum. And they're just seeing films that like I've never even heard of, like but are like kind of entry points to different major like auteurs and also disciplines and themes that are explored in different decades. So um, yeah, I mean,
What?
the Citizen Kane type of films, or
Yeah.
like or McCabe and Mrs. Miller, or the Seventh Seal.
Sure.
Those type of like films. Like I kind of snowballed from there. Like, oh, I go to the library and watch like for hours. I was like, oh, who's Godard? Who's Ozu? Like it's like yeah, I mean, or Kurosawa, you name it. And it was like just kind of became my obsession in a way.
At that time, were there any Vietnamese films that sort of made more of an imprint other than the one that you just mentioned?
Not really. I mean, not much to like later, like probably. I mean, definitely 3 seasons. Tony Bui's 3 seasons. When I saw that at the Art House Theater, the local Art House Theater, and that kind of that again blew my mind as well. It's like and before that, I really had no interest of like
Yeah.
going back to Vietnam. Really, like it's like my parents were already going to Vietnam just to visit family, so I was like, I had no interest. Like it's like, but then like watching that, I was like, oh, it's just like, oh, I definitely am intrigued and want to go back. And like, so I did, like, a couple years later.
Let's talk about Tony's film for a little bit, and not the film itself, but the actual, what was released in 1997 or 98?
No, it came out in 99 or 2000.
99. I remember him
Yeah,
probably shoot and start working on it in 96. But yeah, I think
yeah.
99 was when it was released theatrically, and that made a huge impact on a lot of us. That was sort of like the first time a lot of us thought it's possible, to work in film. And how did it? What
Yeah.
did it do for you in terms of empowerment or agency to kind of like go into that world?
Um, just yeah, it's definitely I don't know about it was just basically, yeah, it just opened my mind, especially now. I mean, with three seasons, I also kind of like was part of this kind of, you know, the especially like with American independent cinema was kind of very going through a resurgence or renaissance in the '90s, right? So, I mean, you think of like Soderbergh, or you think of like Sex Lies and Videotape, films like that, or like or Ed Burns, like the brothers McMullen, and and like but like with Tony and Tim, the Bowie brothers, the Bowie Bros, and like likes of like like Justin Lin, a few years later, and like you discover like Wayne Wong, and whatnot, and or even Ang Lee, like it's like, oh, okay, Asian or Asian American cinema was kind of like
On the rise.
kind of rise, and also kind of like dipping its toes in the mainstream. And Three Sins was a big deal. It's like it was like it did won the hat trick at Sundance. It won the three major awards, right? And it was the top of the town or like and whatnot. And yeah, it was released by Miramax, right? And yeah, it was a big deal. So it's in our house circles, So that was really something that was intrigued me. And then it's just like, again, it's just basically just seeing people who look like me on the big screen. And it wasn't necessarily Vietnamese, more Asian, right? So no different from, say, like Better Luck Tomorrow, or even a few years prior at the Joy Luck Club or something like that. So yeah, so it was definitely say, having that agency in that sense, like, oh yeah, I want to work in this world somehow.
Once you got to the mainland to go to to further your school in Arizona, what did you study there, and how did you get more into the film business?
It's funny because I went to there for a program, started this program, the CIASI program. It was basically a Southeast Asian language program, and so I was there to learn Vietnamese.
Oh
So
wow, didn't know that.
yeah. So it was funny. He had a lot of like so. Um, I was like one of two. I mean, there's only three Vietnamese students. Everyone else was like not was basically white. I mean, academics or something like that who were studying in Southeast Asia or something. Starting in Vietnam or what have you. So,
And it was
but
to
there was
learn
other
like critical
learn Vietnamese.
studies about to learn the actual language.
Yeah.
I never knew that. I always thought
So
you were in Arizona for film studies or something.
no. I was there to to learn Vietnamese, and then of course, and then I stayed and took more classes, stuff like that, history classes, and like it's like, and then also it was like a it was a party school, man. It was
Famous
a
for that, yeah.
rager every night, like it's like yeah. So I mean, I had fun. Let me just say that. Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously you had nothing to do with the Hawaii International Film Festival while you were in Arizona, or did you do
No.
any work with them before?
No. This is like it was just basically just to continue my education.
So you come out of Arizona. What was that like? Did you think that you were going to stay back in the mainland to work, or like what's going on in your mind at that time?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like it's like especially for you're from Hawaii, kid from Hawaii. I think it's like I mean, I always say growing up in Hawaii it's a children's paradise. You you can like you can go to the beach or you always go to the beach, or you can go like basically hunt for crayfish, in the
Yeah,
stream back in your backyard or not very far, go exploring. It was like very much like like it was like the Goonies,
yeah.
but like in Hawaii in a way. So um, it was great. It was great. And then and I don't want to wax nostalgia or anything like that. It's like it's like I lived at a time where like you can you can you can you can leave your doors unlocked,
Yeah.
kind of thing. It's like but yeah, I mean, so but basically, yeah. Once you come of age, like as a teenager, like you want to get off the rock. You want to see the world. I mean, that's no different from like if you're like in
Any
a
small
small
town.
town. Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So in that sense, like, yeah, I want to like see the world.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So,
So as you're leaving
always some.
Arizona, or you're getting ready to finish that program and the world, I mean, then what you're thinking?
I went to London to continue my education. It's like that was fun. That was great. I
And
loved London.
and you studied Vietnamese in London, or what did you study
No,
in
no,
London?
no, 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 no. I just studied. No, I was going into like critical studies, stuff like that. Critical studies. It was all through this communication um, program I was going through. So, um, but yeah, I had a great time. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
I can
Like,
imagine.
it was it was like late 90s, mid late 90s. Like, it was like Oasis was the biggest band in the
Yeah.
world, and
S-
yeah, it was yeah,
The
it's great.
Smiths were
It was awesome.
at their height.
No, the Smiths was like,
They're
like
dying
in the
down.
'80s, right? So, yeah, yeah. So I mean, it was basically kind of Brit rock, Blur and Oasis, and you name it.
And how
The
long were you in London
Verve.
for? The Verve.
2 years, yeah,
Wow, that's a
two
long
years.
time.
Yeah. I mean, the
And
Verve pipe. No, the Verve or the Verve pipe. Yeah, yeah.
Verve. Well, I've known you for a long time, and I had no idea you lived in London for 2 years. And I was just talking
Right, right.
to Bao the other day, and we're talking about he's living in three different cities, but he considers London a fourth because of the work that he's done.
Oh yeah,
So
sure. But Be Water, a
yeah,
lot of
and
production with
for
Be
Be
Water and
Water,
stuff like that.
and he says that that's like one of his favorite cities.
I agree. One of my favorite cities in the world. I mean, I thought I was gonna like that. This is it. This is the city for me. I'm gonna live here and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's like it was great. It was great. I loved it.
Two
I loved
years.
everything about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, not 2 years, maybe a year and a half or something.
yeah,
It was
it's a long time to spend in the
yeah,
city. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
I dug it. Yeah, I lived in West Ealing. Was predominantly working class. And yeah, it was great. You take the underground everywhere. It was great. It's as a student, I just loved it. Just loved it.
do you
So,
know who Win Quiduk is?
of course, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Bao just
yeah,
recently turned me on to him too. Well, apparently, I
yeah.
think
I know him from the San Francisco days.
yeah,
When he was
but
so yeah.
yeah, but he it seems like he spent some time in England and speaks with a British accent now. And
Well, yeah. I mean, he was basically Bourdain's tour on just a couple episodes of No Reservations.
yeah, I had no
Yeah,
idea who he was. I mean, and then I started to go into the rabbit hole. He's a pretty
yeah.
interesting person. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you leave London, come back to where you come back to Hawaii. You come back to
Yeah, I come back to Hawaii to regroup. So
yeah.
yeah, so yeah. And I was going to go to law school, and and just um and then like it basically just like and then like, I just basically got a job with the city government, working as a basically as a like a law clerk, right?
Yeah.
Um, um, Dealing with like civil cases, stuff like someone slips on the sidewalk on like city property, then they get sued. That kind of like it was like scintillating stuff like that, right? So I was like, yeah, okay, but then just it was kind of like kind of in between. Like I was gonna go to or continue on and get go continue schooling or find another job, but then like the film festival, I was attending it, and like like yeah, I was just looking for jobs online on the website, and I saw a kind of a part-time job. Um, like a film festival is, it's not year round; it's seasonal, right? So,
Right.
so he's looking for a part-time job as a seasonal position to do print traffic. And what print traffic means is basically, getting all the films from the various distributors and filmmakers, shipping them over to basically Hawaii, and then shipping them to the theaters. And this is like, this
Big
is not
35 canisters.
big 35 millimeter canisters. It was huge. It was a huge process. It was daunting. I mean, like it's like, that was the world of like, like pro forma invoices and like tariffs and FedEx and UPS and DHL, and like knowing when it comes to like logistics, when it comes to which like um, anywhere from like declaring insurance value, making sure it doesn't go above $50 or something, be held back by customs, and which what are the cutoff times for dropping off a shipment in Nebraska or Tokyo, and so it makes it on the plane and gets to Hawaii within in due time, so yeah, it's crazy. It was like definitely a trial by fire, kind of thing, but I enjoyed it. It was
I've had
great.
a whiff of that, working while I was doing distribution with wave releasing and a little bit with Saigon Electric and print trafficking. It is a monster load of work. And especially, did you have to do the physical side of it too, where you have to go pick it up or deliver it to different theaters and stuff?
Oh yeah, man, I was a young buck, man. You got a
Man,
van, and like it's yeah. So it's
brutal.
like it was brutal. I mean, and another
They're
thing is
heavy.
like, I mean, yeah, exactly. Because and you go to theaters like, where's the dumbwaiter? There's no elevator. Like it's I mean, I like you have to walk up the stairs to the booth. It's because they when they a regular commercial movie theater will show like a movie like Independence Day, and then that's the only one time they'll show it, and they'll show it for like weeks.
Yeah,
That's the delivery, right? And like, but for a film festival, you're showing like over 100 films in like a 2 week, 10 day to 2 week period. It's crazy.
it's
It's
crazy.
crazy. So
Insanity.
you're like walking up and down like these 50-pound
Canister.
canisters. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, it was nuts. It was backbreaking. And but it was great. That kind of like, and that having that tangible, physical, like in the sense, it's almost like existential. Like,
Yeah,
wow, this is film. This is film. Like persistence of vision. Like these 24 frames or
yeah.
coming like it's like the flickering of the lighting. You're seeing images and sound, and like it's like yeah, it was like kind of like really kind of ignited that sense of
The
more
magic.
so the
Yeah.
magic and love. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cinema
So
paradiso magic.
yeah, yeah, but it wasn't like I wasn't falling in love with some hot European woman. Like it's like having like what I'm saying.
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
But
but or
today,
like but I had mentors in the sense like he's old codger like salty salty like kind of like projectionists union projectionists who've been there forever like hilarious hilarity ensues but it was like but like working with various like seasonal workers you had like these festival gypsies in the sense like they would jump from one festival to another and all that stuff like it's like very eclectic cast of characters so it was like camp in a way
yeah.
you know yeah.
It's like when people think about professions like, they just see you today. They're just like, he's probably sat in a comfy air conditioned office for his time and just watched a bunch of movies to get, but people don't realize there's gazillions of hours of doing that menial stuff, like moving those kind of canisters around for many days of your early career, doing that
I
kind
mean,
of
so
like,
yeah, I mean that's like it's just no different from like bootstrapping if you're like a starting a startup or like running a nonprofit with no money. Like it's basically yeah, you're licking 1,000 envelopes or putting
yeah,
stamps on like thousands of envelopes and stuff like that, or like yeah, you're picking up like day old pastries from Safeway for the volunteers. Like it's and what have you. Like it's like yeah, it's like no different. It's just it's basically bootstrapping to a to an nth degree.
yeah. And this idea of like being a participant on the granular level, I talk about this a lot with all the other guests, because once you get to a certain point in your work, you look back and there was a lot of granularity. There's a lot of things that that logistics of trafficking these prints goes a long way into your future, becoming a producer or becoming anything involved in film, because it gives you such a granular understanding of like how these things are being handled on the back end. It gives you a very microscopic view of the way things, and in order to kind of like make anything go really big, you have to have time service to these sort of activities, right?
Yeah, I mean, like a film festival is no different from like it's like a circus. It's the big tent show. You're kind of like tuning your own, basically yeah, carnival barking, hoping people will come. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's like no different from like concerts or conventions or what have you. Like it's like I think I always see a film festival as like yeah, definitely. How like it's like like it's like I mean, I would say a film festival is kind of like basically a marathon or 2 weeks of like many events. So um, yeah, logistically, it's a very much a challenge. So I'm all down for like like it's never people think it's like oh
Yeah.
you just show the movie in the theater. It's like no, it's not only like it's not only that. It's like it's anything from like point of sale to using the right software, using like having kind of like yeah, it's just like just having this really very um I mean in a way it's like uh not what was that just having just I'm just really a big fan of admire people who can think logistically and kind of come up with really good systems um in that sense like it's like I love databases.
Yeah, it's a
I
talent.
love
It's a
yeah.
you have to really like it to be good at that kind of. My wife is like that. She's really good at that kind of logistics and organizational thinking.
Yeah, and like and just like basically and communication, open communication, make sure everyone's on the same page. Yeah, it's
What
it's
what did your parents think of you in the early days? Doing work at the film festival. Did they consider it a career path, or did they even care? Did you come from a family that really gave a shit about that?
uh not really. I think if anything, they were always like like not only I would say not saying like Asian parents, but just parents in general, like oh doctor, lawyer kind of
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, so I think it's like but like I think it's like yeah, they were just working class, just more just hoping that we get jobs and be
Right.
sustainable in that sense,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Speaking of which,
I mean, but my
yeah.
parents went to but then my parents would go to the movies too. I mean, yeah, I mean, like especially in Hawaii, like it's like I mean, growing up in Hawaii, we dropped like local channels which would be showing like aside from like like TGIF Fridays, like it's like like Full House or something like that. Like
Yeah.
they were like live feeds of like the Grand Sumo tournament in Japan or Korean dramas or subtitled in English. Japanese dramas were really huge. And a lot of them were like and that's like everyone would watch it, not only like Japanese or Koreans. Everyone would watch it. It's
Right.
just like we were just obsessed with it. I think that's just kind of like how the um
Korean dramas are today.
well, yeah, exactly. I think it's like always, in a way, Hawaii's always been in the forefront, kind of like the test market, so to speak. The gateway to anywhere from Korean dramas, Korean entertainment to I would say like what's that stupid thing? I mean, not stupid. Like that, not kendoku or whatever that the kids play. The it looks like a top. I don't know. I forget. But like like even like Tamagotchi was big, Pokemon, you name it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Pog started from Hawaii, so it's like, um, yeah. So it's, yes, Hawaii's a, strange place in the grand scheme of things, but it's great. It's great.
So now you're graduating from moving canisters around. What's your next position at the
So,
film
so my mentor was basically, just like, Canadian, he's a film programmer. He's basically the curator for the festival, and his name is Bruce Fletcher, and ornery guy. Like it's like um, great guy, vast knowledge of films. Like it's like um, but he, it's like I would say just kind of took me under his wing, taught me
Yeah.
the ropes and stuff like that, and then when he left the organization, I took over. So as the kind of curator for the festival, and never looked back.
Wow. Wow. Do you oversee the financial structure or help with money, dollars coming in, sponsorships, and the business side of things?
Again, like bootstrapping, so you're like doing like you're wearing many hats, but no, I mean, primarily my main job is basically just the
Curate.
curatorial aspect, curate or program that's of course, like I think there's just you have to strike that, you have to. I think my kind of philosophy with film festival, depending what your festival is made up of your audience's tastes, so you have
Right.
to have like like it's like you have to cater to their taste, but at the same time challenge them. That's what like it's like we're not a nonprofit. I mean, we are a nonprofit. We're not a for-profit. So in that sense, like we're an arts organization, and as a curator, you want to challenge the audiences, right? But at the same time, you don't want to um, um, disenfranchise them in the way that like it's like, oh, you, you should see like these very severe black and white, like this severe black and white Swedish film. Like I mean, you can, but you have to couch it with other things, like anchors, so to speak, too. And like it's like so I think you have to strike that balance because you're catering to audiences who want to see the Korean films and the Japanese
Right.
films, right? But at the same time, you want to cater to the minority in the audience who wants to be challenged too. I mean, basically people who are me,
Yeah.
who like it's like yeah, and so it's like yeah, so and that's kind of like the benefits of like having in the sense a nonprofit organization, like as most festivals are, because you're not there to make profit. You're just there to basically be sustainable, um, and make sure not to lose money.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, yeah.
I
So,
um I asked. Well, we had Wynton Bowie, who's a chef, on a few episodes ago, and he asked me a question that kind of like was kind of blew my mind at the time when he asked it. He said, "Do you think that these high end chefs are making food to be delicious?" And I didn't understand what that meant at the time, so I had to press him on that. And in the same vein, or a little bit different, I want to ask you. Do you pick films sometimes where it has to be quality, or you know is one of the prerequisites for accepting films from your curating seat, um quality?
oh yeah, 100%. But I mean, I get what you're saying. It depends on
Does it have to be
and
delicious, or is it filling some other thing?
well, it depends on the mission statement of the film festival, right? If it's like if my film festival or arts organization is to foster or support voices of like you know student filmmakers, elementary student, high school filmmakers, then is quality, like it's like
Right.
like it's like I mean, of course, like I think or like um so in that sense, it's like you had to strike that balance, like it's like quality is definitely um a big big factor, but quality means like technical quality, right? I mean, for me, it's more about how distinct and how strong that voice or perspective of the filmmaker is, right? You could, I mean, there are films that are like, two-handers or just basically set in like one location, maybe an apartment, but it's, the story or the acting is very, very strong. Or like it's like, maybe it's like a film made by a disenfranchised community and about like a very unique point of view, and that I've never seen, but technical qualities kind of like not there because they're not there yet. It's like, but there's definitely a perspective that needs to be seen or needs to be experienced. Um, so in that sense, yeah, it's just like it all depends, and then I think it depends on like also themes, maybe sidebars that you're working on that year, or um, so Like it's like you can even say that for like Asian American films. Like it's like I think when it comes to the whole timeline or history of Asian American cinema, there's always been challenges when it comes to financing, to equipment, to expertise. But I mean, the message of the storyteller filmmaker is very distinct. You know, and very so you can forgive stuff,
Yeah.
things like that here and there. It's just more about the kind of how strong of a perspective is for the filmmaker that comes out at the end, right? So
In terms of like a controversial film or some piece that's highly controversial, what's your take on that? I mean, where you don't necessarily agree with the maybe political side of it or the religious side of it or whatever angle that you don't agree but feel like it needs to be seen, like how do you make that? Is there a decision process that sort of outlines your direction and your mission? You don't necessarily agree with the perspective, but you feel like, have you ever come across a film like that? Or when you feel like you don't agree with
yeah,
the line, you don't show it?
I mean, like I'm not gonna show uh Dinesh D'Souza films. The who Dinesh D'Souza is.
No,
He's like a very far right filmmaker who's he's done like kind of like films like basically like on Obama or Hillary Clinton, glorifying Donald Trump and stuff like that, that are very um yeah, very much have an
leaning one
agenda.
side, yeah.
They have an agenda, so yeah, it depends. There's the films that have an agenda. I mean, all films have an agenda in
Yeah,
that
yeah,
sense,
yeah.
right? So, but um I feel like if it's like yeah, there are films that maybe I don't necessarily agree with, um but have I shown? Yes, of course, I've done that. It's just basically just to spark discussion or discourse in a
Yeah.
sense. Um, so yeah, it. I mean, honestly, I think it's more of a in a sense of like taste and whatnot. It's like my festival is not necessarily. It's like a very audience driven festival, more community driven. So I always say I don't have the luxury of programming films that suit my taste. You know,
Makes sense, yeah.
yeah. Um, so in that sense, but at the same time, I don't want to. I don't obviously don't program films that that I feel um, can bring to have an agenda that is very. I'll say, like yeah, a political agenda that is very that's not necessarily good for like in the sense of that have no like humanitarian goal,
Right.
right? I mean, there are films that are environmental films, or maybe films about like sex trafficking or something like that. They are very political, but they are they have a political point of view, right? Um, but at the same time, they're message driven. They're exposing an injustice. And like maybe depending on what side of the coin you are politically, you see it as an injustice, or you see it as not an injustice, or you see it as fake news or something.
Right.
It's like yeah. So it's just like I just can only show films that move me, or I feel like in that sense that's what a curator is, right? Like it's like and when you have the kind of advantage to kind of bring these to the light, and then to kind of patrons or what have you, to the the public space.
Have you ever had backlash to a film that you brought in? And, if so, how did you deal with the backlash? Do you just ignore it or do you address it?
Uh, yeah, backlash in the sense like it's like that film was horrible. Like, why did you choose that film? Like it's like, oh, I don't know. I mean, like it's like but yeah, I mean, I think now recently, I think especially with, like especially my, maybe it's not particularly the case for my film festival, but I think for film festivals in general tend to, have an older audience, and some, there's some, I would say, even to my, not to my shock or anything like that. Some of them are definitely um, far right politically. So there's some people who think you're showing this film because you have an agenda. It's like, well, yes, well, it's like I think it's like no, it's just a perspective, and
Yeah.
like it's like like a film about like voter suppression and gerrymandering and like disenfranchising people of color and communities. I mean, if that's a political agenda, then okay, sue me. If that's not, if you feel that that is fake news or that's like not real, then I don't know what to say, dude.
Right. Right.
So yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, there's always, there's always opinions, and I think that's like, you gotta develop, a thick skin for that, just back it up, just back it up. I mean, I always back up about why I chose this film is because of A, B, and C, you know.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question that's a little touchy about the development of artists. Um, you can answer it with the gloves off or on, but I've always wondered, and I've always wanted to ask you. When you see young directors or writers or artists in the early days, and you see quality, and you see a vision there, an distinct fingerprint there, do you do you do you see that early on? Do you go, okay, that person's going to go somewhere? And if you do have that, what all are the hallmarks of young artists that eventually arrive to the place that you think that they're going to go?
Oh, are you referencing all artists or like filmmakers in particular,
Let's talk
specifically?
about filmmakers in particular for now, and then we can trickle down to general artists.
Well, I mean, I can only speak on filmmakers, really, honestly,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think it's like in a sense, like I see, you know, this is 2021, right? I mean, like with the kind of advent or introduction of digital technology, 20 years ago, kind of like it democratized um,
Space.
the space. As a I think it's basically how you see it. It's like is film or cinema, is it an art or a craft, right? Um, I think if you see it as an art, then then yeah, definitely it's like then it's like the distinct voice. It's like a very very unique voice, unique perspectives in that sense, and and trying to um, shake up or disrupt the format or the medium or like kind of like tropes and the foundations of film, right? In that sense, or embracing them and making them really strong, using and telling your story to say if you're using kind of like like the classic three act structure, but using it really well, then then that's great. Then that could go more into into craft.
Yeah.
And then craft meaning like you're technically very proficient in that area. You know how to use the tools at hand. And so I think it's like very um so I think it's like a kind of a combo of both. But there are filmmakers who are artists, true artists, who I think yeah, you're just mesmerized by their work. I think and that sense kind of delves into kind of what is an artist is an artist, right? And like I think but because like I mean art there are my point is basically for the democratization um, filmmaking through technology is that it's everyone can be a craftsman, in filmmaking, but it's like, can you be an artist in filmmaking? And that's where you have you have to have the goods. I don't know how you have it. Maybe it's innate or whatever, or maybe something sometimes, or a lot of it's like something that you develop through world experience, or life experience. Um, but so in that sense, like yeah, you see a lot of like, like for example, like I see a lot of films from USC or NYU or UCLA. Craft is great, It's like technology, cinematography is awesome, like it's like special effects are incredible, what have you, like lighting is great, but the story is like you know.
Mm.
So it's just like at the end of the day, it's all about story, you know. So, I mean, if anything, if any advice, like yeah, you know, your story has to be profound or at least strong, and you have to have good sound. That's the trait. That's the craft part. Like it's like I don't care if you shot it on your. I mean, actually, if you shoot on an iPhone, it's probably look great. But like, like if you shot on a camcorder or something like that, and like, but if like like sound is very very key. Sound is the most important technical aspect of film, in my opinion. So yeah, story and sound.
Yeah, and you mentioned story. I mean, how do you come up with good story? How do you no, I'll ask a different question. How do you judge a good story? What's some of your like immediate responses to a question like that? Like what do you when you see a good story, can you quantify or qualify it through words to me right now? Like here's what makes a good story.
I mean, like when that's something that you can't quantify. You can't make a list of, like it's like, you just have to move you, or if it moves, and it could be a good or bad thing. It can move you to be, into, kind of like positively, or if it moves you negatively, then that's still an emotional reaction, right? So, just as long as it can, if the filmmaker can do that, like if you're like a gonzo filmmaker, or if you're like a filmmaker like Gaspar Noé, who like is willing to challenge you, or like like Harmony Korine, like it's like yeah, the reaction like that may not have a good
Good
reaction,
reaction, yeah.
or yeah, or like but it's like yeah, but was he successful in moving you? Like yeah, yes, in that way, so um uh I mean, it just depends. Like I mean, like one of the films. Here's a good example. One. Um, there's a film called. It came out a few years ago called "In the Family," right? Um, "In the Family" is basically an LGBTQ story. Written and directed by a filmmaker named Patrick Wong, who I think I believe he's East Coast or New York based, and it's set in. I think it's set in Tennessee or in the South, and it's like a story about and he plays the main character. He's the star of the film. And he plays like a Asian American, who's married to he's a gay marriage with a Caucasian teacher, and they have a Caucasian teacher has a son from a previous marriage, and he came out of the closet, fell in love with Patrick's character, and they both have this idyllic life, in the South. And then unfortunately the teacher dies, right? So the family wants to. So I mean Patrick's character, who's not a blood relation to his son, but he's raised him. Um, um, he's basically trying to fight for his rights to adopt him. While the
Right.
family is trying to um, you know basically take him away from Patrick. And this is like has all has all like writings on the wall. When I saw that, when the film was entered, that's was like, oh, first of all, it's a 3-hour film. you know, the writer director also is the main star, and it's like, oh, red flag. Like it's like like, and even more so, the film is 3 hours, and it only has like 60 static shots. you know. So it's like, okay, very few edits, and like, and it's like, oh, Ryan Reynolds is gonna be terrible, right?
Yeah.
Like, like it's like this is like art school or film school bullshit, right? And like, like it's, but in the end, like it's like the film is like it was one of the best films I saw that year.
Wow.
It was, I think, was the best film I saw that year. It was so moving and it's so traditional in the sense, like it was like in the, I would say almost like in the, like 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 it kind of unspooled like like a To Kill a Mockingbird, like Harper Lee or something like that, or you think or like even like a um Frank Capra, in a way, and he was amazing, like as an actor, he was amazing, and the writing was amazing, and like in a sense, like it's like nothing revolutionary. It's
Right.
basically, if you see this on paper, like like when we had TV guides, like when this the mini snouts for a TV guide, like, oh man, this sounds like a Lifetime movie,
Right. Right.
yeah, it just moved me, it blew me away, and I was just like so transfixed that yeah, just loved it. Um, oh, you froze there for a second. Did
Yeah.
you hear what I said? Okay.
Yeah. It froze
Um,
there for me. I don't know why.
okay. But yeah, it was just so that was like a film that was like so out of the box, but at the same time so in the box that it kind of, yes, it only had 60 static shots, very few cuts like that, but it was such a done in such a classical way of storytelling, uh, that is, and in the um, that I, kind of, that was completely moved. And it's kind of like it strikes that right balance, like when you think of classical, you think, like Harper Lee or Frank Capra, that's classical.
Yeah.
That's as classical as you can get, So, um,
So
I
so
thought
what
it
I'm
was amazing.
what I'm hearing basically is it just needs to move you.
Yeah, it just needs to move you.
It
Yeah.
just needs to move you.
And yeah. Or, I mean, in a good or bad place,
Yeah.
like it's like, yeah, yeah. And then it depends on on context too. If you're looking at a like an exploitation film, or like like a film like Cannibal Holocaust, which is yeah, that would definitely move you. Like it might make you like riot or something like that, like write letters to your like senator, like I'm like enraged or something like that. But this film's come out, like, but it's like that's the context, that's the genre,
Yeah.
it's yeah, if you're a fan of the genre, then yeah, you know.
When did you sort of start dipping your toes into producing?
Uh, basically, just helping friends out,
In what
and it's basic,
capacity?
just with contacts, just more in the sense of like, oh, I can introduce you to this person who I know, or that's how it all started, or like maybe, introducing to the other festival programmers, or sales agents, you name it, um, but it was like, again, this is, kind of really, and this is where it kind of like brought me back into kind of like Vietnamese culture, in the sense of, I mean, all my friends were, a lot of my good friends were Vietnamese American filmmakers or Vietnamese filmmakers, who were making films, and as like a lot of they weren't, with a lot of Vietnamese American filmmakers who were raised in Orange County or Southern California, they all, in close proximity to Hollywood, they all went to film school. But in the '90s and early aughts, there were very little um, opportunities, for filmmakers in the system, so to speak. So,
Right.
a lot of them went back to Vietnam. To it was just like the Wild West there, burgeoning industry, rising middle class. Like it's like to have the opportunity to enter the Vietnamese film entertainment industry from the ground up. Um, um, was a great advantage. So, it's kind of like the opportunity to like um, to make things happen. I could go back to like Stefan Dalger, our good friend. He was like he went back to Vietnam, and made like this low art house movie. All in this barrel. And I was really blown away by it, and blown away by like the buoys. With um, Three Seasons or Ham Tran with Journey from the Fall. And in with Buffalo Boy, and like uh yeah, so it was just like that's how this also started through friendships. Like, oh, well, I can help you out. It's a favor.
Yeah.
It's like very much in the very much like how independent film is. Like it's all through favors and relationships, what have you. So, and I kind of dug it. Kind of like uh. So that's how we kind of like collaborate together to work on Stefan's next film, Saigon Electra.
Yeah. Talk about a movie that moves you as Alan Sparrow, right? I mean, technically, craftsmanship. I mean, we can put all that conversation on hold for a bit. Uh, the storyline of that film, whatever Stefan did, the magic of that movie, I think moves so many people. Um, you can't put that into a formula. What he did with Alan Sparrow, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, you can't. It's like Stefan and I, kind of bonded on our love for independent film, and I just like, he was like, like he was a jack of all trades, man. He was not only behind the camera, in front of the camera too, but our love for like international cinema, European cinema, especially like, Owl in the Sparrow was made for next to nothing, and he shot it in a very kind of Dogma 95 style,
Yeah.
right? But let me tell you, the story's like nothing new, um, but he did it so well, and again, he captured the essence and the sounds of Saigon, you know, like it was like dirty. I mean, I love the dirty sound in that film, just capturing the ambiance, is like the craziness of thousands of motorbikes just run on the road
Yeah.
24/7. Like street vendors like hawking their like putiu, or like like and whatnot. Like it's like just constant conversations they hear like that. He captured that so well that it was like almost like yeah, it was like very much like just being in some
In Saigon.
alleyway in
Yeah.
Saigon, right? So yeah, so in that sense, like he really kind of used the kind of the medium to his advantage, and using that sound, the dirty sound, to really kind of the constant honking and the constant like motorbikes running, that was like uh as almost like white noise, you know.
Yeah.
It was great. That's what gave the film, lended its ambiance and authenticity in a way.
When was the first time you went back to Vietnam? What was it like?
I went back to Vietnam probably in 2001 or 2002. I went there as a as a representative of the film festival. Actually, got invited to check out, like, update, like on the current state of filmmakers there. So I also got invited to Hanoi to meet with the film board, aka censors, and go to the film archive, and it was like two different worlds, like Hanoi and Saigon.
Yeah.
Like Saigon was kind of freewheeling, like all these young, filmmakers doing stuff, and like you go to Hanoi, and,
Button
it's
up.
very much, obviously, buttoned up, but in a like loose kind of like and it's like kind of government way, they were government workers, of the party, of course,
Right.
but like it's like yeah, they had a very lax schedule, so to speak. Like it's like um yeah, like uh they're very set hours, with the film board, and and it was interesting. I mean, very nice people, like it's like and going to and introducing the meeting with, like, like different officials that were like like they were like, of the party, and so they would, like, they be like educated. They went to school in like Moscow, right?
Right.
Or Havana. I mean, my kind of contact was he was like the one, maybe perhaps the first Vietnamese, or maybe not the only Vietnamese, but definitely one of the few Vietnamese who went to Cuba for education. So
Right.
it was like, yeah, it was interesting, and it was like a different world that I actually like was like totally very fascinated by. You know, I remember going to the film archive and like they locked me up in a screening room and they gave me all these films and I couldn't because I couldn't bring them back. I couldn't bring back VHS tapes at the time or DVDs back to there was it had to be there only. And they basically locked me there for like 10 hours to watch all these films. And of course, they were all like all
Propaganda films.
yeah documentaries on like it's like you know on this Hmong community or something. Like it's like how basically, aka how we treat our our like how we treat them so well. Like it's like culturally and all that stuff, or like yeah. So or like a street market, like street market, or like some conservationist or something. Like a lot of a lot of documentaries on birds. Like it's like like it's like, but it's like it's like it is what it is. I enjoyed it. I like on a you know um ethnographic social political kind of like context. It was very fascinating.
What about the environment? Like when you got off the plane, that first feeling of walk, because back in the day we were walking on the tarmac to get into the terminal. Um,
Yeah.
what were your early sensory sort of feelings stepping out of that plane for the first time in Vietnam?
Uh, sorry about the pounding.
No worries.
You still here? Okay. Yeah. Um, I'm sheltering in Hawaii with my mom's apartment. She's cooking. Uh, Today's the Geizo for my grandfather, so she's preparing stuff. So, but anyway,
Dirty noise ambiance.
yeah, exactly. Yes, like Saigon.
Adding
Yeah.
to the episode. Love it.
Bang bow.
I don't edit these episodes.
That's fine.
We just go.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, like, I mean, yeah, for all the the beginners, the bullshit beginner stuff that you go through, like,
Yeah.
too scared to cross the street, and, and stuff like that, like, or like the street, like, was the food safe to eat, and like, like, it's like, it was like, I remember, I mean, from Hawaii, it's like, it's humid in Hawaii, but man, it's humid in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Humid in Asia in general, right? It's crazy. But it's just like it was, very, very much a sensory overload. But I loved it. It was crazy. It was in a good way. Like it's like people just living their lives, making it happen. Like it's like all the kind of like things you learn that have been told to you by your elders. Like it's like yeah, I mean, a lot of it is true, but at the same time, just everyday people living their lives, and making it happen. It's the true Vietnamese spirit of like, just bootstrapping. Again, I use that word constantly.
Yeah.
But yeah. So it's like,
what were the theaters like?
well, I mean, when I went there in 2001 or 2002, I mean, there were multiplexes, already. I mean, the beginning of multiplexes, but like, I think, but like a lot of the theaters were basically, and then this is basically prior to the privatization of the film industry, so it was still state run, so it was very much like the theaters were basically, well, the one theaters I went to were cultural centers, right? So, basically, run by the government, and I was more fascinated with the 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 theater, the booth, going upstairs to the booth, seeing the projection booth, seeing the old projectors, because they were like these old, like solid, like stainless steel, um 35 million projectors from the Soviet Union.
Wow.
You see like all in Russian, like like kind of like stamped Russian, like the seals or whatever on the, and like made in the 50s and stuff like that. It was like I was like, whoa, this is so cool,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you go to the culture centers, you see, again, like a lot of the like very kind of propaganda posters you see that you would see like in like the Soviet Union
Yeah.
or China, like happy, like
Happy worker.
happy patriots, happy workers. Like it's like yeah. It's no different. It's very cool, in that sense.
And then the
Uh,
theaters today are just like more modern than the US.
oh yeah, I mean theaters today, like I mean they're like they're definitely more modern. Um, yeah, they're just I mean they were
State of the art.
state of the art. Because a lot of it was from Korea. Korean entertainment has taken over, like CJ, CGV, Lotte. Those are big chaebols, right? The big entertainment chaebols have now kind of penetrated Vietnam.
Can I
They're
ask
like
you
the
about
number
that?
one and two theater chains. Yeah.
Why do you think? All right, it's a two-part question. Why do you think Vietnam was, overtaken by Korean entertainment? And second part of that is what is our sort of
You make it sound like it's added to the the story of Vietnam being occupied by.
years ago it
It,
really
it
made my blood
is
boil.
but it is like definitely economically, yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, come
yeah.
on. I mean, this is something that is like, we're consumed by K-pop, we're consumed by Korean drama. I mean, it's almost more painful than, this idea of being dominated by another country because that soft power is really taken over in Vietnam. What led to that?
But that's like all over the world, Ken. I mean,
Yeah,
you're looking at like I mean, looking at Japan. You're looking at like it's like I mean, you think in Asia, like K-pop has been around for a very, very long time, I mean, but you're looking at all over the world. You're looking at like how K-pop fans have taken over using social media on like TikTok and like have like taken over like hashtags like far right wing hashtags and
yeah.
what have you to kind of like troll them, and you're looking at BTS, that's all roads lead to BTS and Blackpink. They're the biggest pop groups in the world. So I mean, Vietnam is no different. Um, but um, but yeah, I mean, it's just basically smart uh, private and public legislation and partnerships in Korea to make the soft power. They make the Hallyu or the Korean wave. Like it's like literally the tsunami of like Korean entertainment through K-pop and K-dramas. But it's kind of like it was embedded in Southeast Asia and Asia, and now it's all over the world. It
How
is a
did it
virus in
start?
a way.
How did the Korean wave begin? Was there a person? Was there a, would you call it chaebo?
Yeah,
Was it
chaebols are basically um, not not they're big multinationals now, or like basic big companies, family dynasties,
right?
usually by a family, and then they are in various industries like food, entertainment, uh, construction, you name it. It's like it has a CJ label or something. It's manufacturing TVs, electronics. That's what a chaebol is, right?
So
Airlines, you name it. So
did it start this whole Korean wave? Did it start with an individual? Did it start with? I mean, you get things to the legislative levels of government. It had to start from something, from somewhere. What was the origination of all of this?
like it's like there's many things. I don't know, but I don't want to go into the whole history of like the
Yeah,
Korean wave, but it's like
and
I
I
mean,
asked because I
basically
want.
it's like, yeah, basically it's like I mean it's part of it is in a sense like there are like pioneers, basically Korean Americans who came back just like Vietnamese Americans came back, uh, like came back to Korea to kind of like introduce hip hop, for example. There are hip hop groups, like or rock music were brought in, and kind of like they were these are always deemed as like Western styles of music or like but they were able these are Koreans who who spoke nominal Korean, English was their first language, but they hustled. It was all about the hustle,
Hmm.
and it captured that it captured that generation. Like it's all about timing. It was basically a time where and in Korea, like especially in the '90s, early '90s, where there was a lot of corruption, becoming more democratic, and then like there were a lot of scandals, a lot of like tragedies that happened, like because of all the corruption, and there was like and it was like again, but also like being economically rising middle class, in the entry point of introducing a lot of like foreign investment into Korea, as the next tiger. It's no different from what Vietnam was now, and in a sense that I think but the key is with these K dramas and K pop, I think what what was working for them was that they weren't protective of their IP in the sense how Japan is, because Japan was like light years ahead with J-pop and Japanese dramas
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But they were very, or even anime or manga. They were there's a huge IP, but they were very insular and protective of. They had to keep it in Japan, or if they, if there was any interest outside from the U.S. or something like that to bring it over, carry it over. They were just asking for astronomical amounts of money. Like it's like Korea was just like through kind of like the Korean diaspora communities through like radio stations or like basically in language TV stations or like Korean grocery stores or VHS rental stores. They didn't care. It was the like the when it came to I mean, part of it was yes, piracy. Was running rampant, but
Yeah.
when it comes to they were selling their dramas to kind of in language Korean radio, Korean TV stations in the U.S. and around the world, and kind of it took off. DVDs. And with DVDs, it took off with DVDs and people sharing it and whatnot. And when it came to streaming, like watching it on the internet, like it's like Vicky was a early adopter of Asian dramas, and what have you, and it led to Netflix, and so I think Korea had a head start in bringing this Korean wave. That was the whole mission statement, is to bring port over Korean entertainment, soft power to the world to
Well, yeah.
promote Korea, to promote tourism, promote Korean products, So you have it all helped with Hyundai and Kia and Samsung and you name it, So it all work hand in hand, and I think that was in a way culturally a mistake on Japan's end to keep it so insular. Because honestly, Japan was like light years ahead of Korea,
Right. Right.
but like and in that sense, like Korea using that kind of like soft power,
Or
they were able to, like they're like, oh yeah, I mean, the next logical step is to kind of like take advantage of other markets, and you, well, how do you do that? You go into other burgeoning economies like Vietnam or Turkey or Indonesia. Like it's like CJ's established like offices like in those countries. Ready to build, and then they exploit their kind of a growing library of entertainment, like films to make remakes, local remakes, So
brilliant. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So in that sense, yeah, man,
Or
it's like it's that sense of not being so precious of your IP,
yeah.
and then like getting it out there because like like I think it's all cultural. It's all cultural.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even working with Japan now, you know, is very. It could be very hard sometimes to get IPs brought or over to the like in the toy side with my brother, working with Japan a little bit. It's very it's tight. It's a very difficult process sometimes to kind of pick up IP that that he wants to produce and look into.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, how are we looking on progress in Vietnam? Um, do you think that we are on our way? Are we on our way? What can we do to ignite the direction of getting our media, our content out.
Well, I mean, I just want to be clear. Is like like it's like I'm not speaking on behalf as an outsider.
Yeah,
I am Vietnamese. I'm not a Vietnamase citizen. I know it's important raised in Vietnam. So I can
just your
only speak
opinion.
on that.
Yeah,
Yeah, but uh, but when it comes to Vietnam, and the cultural exports of Vietnam when it comes to film, I think it's like a lot of it is there are a lot of like um, comparisons, like it's like a precedence from other countries and like from neighbors like from like South Korea and Japan, like it's like they they also had their own censorship issues, and it was basically filmmakers who were clever enough to kind of dig in, put in their messaging by being and kind of being finding loopholes creatively to those films and like or and a lot of it was rooted in exploitation films, genre movies, um, yakuza movies, or like you know, or like chanbara films, like in Japan, or they basically kind of low budget, bloody sword and samurai movies,
yeah,
um, I mean, like revenge movies, like it's like every country goes like Taiwan, the Taiwan black movies, for example. There was an era where a lot of films were censored or completely banned. They were called black movies because they were like dealt into kind of black exploitation themes. Exploitation usually of like it's like it's of its time, but usually a lot of woman revenge movies. Like a woman who is like raped or something like that. She's like traumatized, and she becomes so she wreaks um she basically just it's basically Kill Bill.
yeah.
She
Wreaks
kind of
havoc
like
on the. Yeah,
wreaks havoc on her attackers. So it's like like it's a vigilante justice or like victim justice in that sense. It's like but like they all started. I mean, no different from like in America. Like like Martin Scorsese or Francis Ford Coppola. I mean, they're deemed like the greatest American filmmakers, but they all started somewhere. They all started in Roger Corman movies, these low grade B movies, Um, so in that sense, I think. So what I'm saying is that that type of those type of movies have to be. There's got to be a space for that as a testing ground for ideas, and also to kind of incite, to again move people in different type of emotional reactions, and so it's like I think that's I mean you look at like filmmakers like Bong Joon Ho or Park Chan Wook, their stuff is very rooted in genre,
yeah.
and that's no different, and but also in the sense like there's so that's one thing historically when you look at but you're looking at progressively you got to have gender parity and you have to have there has to be more um, um, opportunities for uh, non-male filmmakers. Not only I'm not talking only about uh, women filmmakers or storytellers, what have you, but also non-binary, you
Yeah.
name it. Um, it's yeah. So and Vietnam is such a unique, strange place, is because it is a communist socialist country. At the same time, it's like there's a lot of and like there's like um, um, freedom of the press and freedom of speech is very constrained there. Activism is very constrained, but at the same time, there are like I would say other sides that deals with like LGBTQ issues
Much more
or like,
open.
which is much more open and
Yeah,
progressive. Not transgressive, but progressive. So so in that sense, like yeah, we've got to um, um, look at there's got to be more opportunities for that, and then by doing that, meaning that there's got to be a space for art house films, and when you look at commercial Vietnamese cinema, it's all very much no different from any other country. Like, what makes money? You know,
Yep.
this is like it's got to be comedies. It's got to be blah blah blah. It's got to be movies that are made for Lunar New Year, right? Like for that, what have you? Like it's like, no, it's got to be space for art house. And I think again, going back to Korea, one of the advantages when it comes to the public-private partnership, when it comes to the Korean Wave, Hallyu, domestically in Korea is like the theater chains, and the producer, the union, you're unionized, what have you. There was government policy to come up with a quota system when it comes to what is shown theatrically in the theaters, right? And so it was basically domestic films, Korean films. There was the blackout periods, or like basically a percentage of how many films had to be seen that were had to be distributed that were made by Koreans versus, and there were like blackout periods, or like and then, or of other of Hollywood movies, for example, or foreign films, and that kind of like again, for Korean audiences, they're like, there was also a time where like, oh, I'm not gonna see a Korean film, it's just crappy, you know can't compare it to like, I mean, back then, like Batman or something like that, like it's like, but it just allowed filmmakers to kind of like work on their craft, and yeah, and so like, shitty films were produced, shitty films were made, but some eked out and came out, they became good.
Yeah.
I mean, better and better films came out, and that kind of gained traction locally. It gained traction in the film festival world, by tastemakers. That's why you have the old boys. That's why you have like, you know, um, the host, and that's the trajectory of like filmmakers like Park Chan Wook and Bong Joon Ho. You know, that's how I mean, honestly, they're brilliant filmmakers, but I don't think they would have had their head start
Right.
if it wasn't for these
Government
initiatives.
help. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, and I've always argued that, like, in a way, that's what Vietnam and what government, the government's in your face all the time, right? Like, it's like, if you want to promote Vietnam culturally, you got to do stuff like that, like it's like, versus not being, in a way, it's like, this very kind of unfettered free market, free market, that when it comes to a lot of like aspects of of various industries in Vietnam. So
yeah, there has to be some government intervention on capping out international films or international product being brought into to foster our own film community in Vietnam.
no, I mean I mean, and the time has, the circumstances have changed, and like I don't think that's viable. That's not viable anymore.
Oh, really? Why?
Because you have like Marvel movies now. Like it's like, or Fast and Furious movies. The money's too good.
Yeah.
The money's too good. I mean, are you like, as a distributor, as an exhibitor, like, oh yeah, I can't show the next Avengers movies because at this time, because it's going to be because it's the blackout period. It has to be only Vietnamese films. Like that's impossible. Like it's like that's not the case anymore. When it comes to globalization of the film industry, right? But so it's got to be more in a sense of incentivizing it, where theater chains or exhibitors have to at least carve out a space for domestic films, or allow them not to be just driven by just free market. Like it's like, oh, it just didn't do well, numbers wise opening weekend, so it's out. Like it's like, then that's where the government can come in. Okay, well, we're going to give you initiatives of like like stipends, or like like it's like, okay, well, we're rent out this one or two theaters for these local films, and then it's like allow that to at least like have the exhibitors kind of like make money, or like not lose money in that sense, so it's got to be in a scheme like in that way, so
yeah. Is there a government body in Vietnam right now mandating these ideas or spearheading this direction?
no, no, not that I know. And there are like I did go to one. There is like a uh, not a collective, but not a what do you call it? Like a not a cabal. It's a wrong word, but there is like a a federation, so to speak. Of like um, that is trying to do that. But it's not. There's no real government support. In that sense. I think it's like um,
But it's a start,
I mean,
right?
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a start for sure. But I mean, I think but a lot of it needs to be honestly, man. Yeah, it's like I think it's like there's got to be when it comes to um, protections on workers, and artists and stuff like that. I mean, I mean, there are unions in Vietnam, but I think the film industry has to be more. There's got to be some aspect of unions being established so they become so they
It's a
have
voice.
like skin in the game, skin in
Yeah.
the game. They have demands, and like it wasn't easy in the Koreans. Like Koreans have a long history, a very storied history of protest. Like a lot of filmmakers and producers have protested stuff. Like over the years to meet those demands. Like when the quota was lifted, 10, 15 years ago, because Korea and the U.S. kind of like had free trade agreement. Like it's like so that it affected the film industry greatly in the sense that the quota was lifted. And that freaked out producers
Yeah.
and filmmakers. Like, oh shit, what are we going to do? Like, they had no trust in the audience. The audience was just going to, oh yeah, that meant, or even the exhibitors, like, oh yeah, we can finally not show these crap Korean movies. We're just going to show the next blockbuster, next Korean, like, but no, it just didn't. So the market kind of like the market was mature enough, or
To
not,
stand alone.
the product was mature enough in the sense that it performed well enough in the market that there was a slight drop, but then after that it's like you're looking at Korean films and in American films or foreign films neck and neck, and now even many times
Surpass. Yeah.
Korean films surpassing it. So it's like yeah, like, you have to have that. You got to have those protections to allow the audience to and also filmmakers to kind of like um, matriculate, basically evolve, in their taste, and also in the filmmakers to evolve in their craftsmanship, um, so
Can we talk about your work with a company called East Films?
oh yeah, sure. I mean, the company that you're into,
Yes, the company that I'm in, and
yeah.
Bao and Hamtran and Lin
Uh,
Fantine.
mhm.
It's an important part of all of our partners to grow the film industry in Vietnam. Can you tell me about the history of it?
Well, I mean, like like I mean, just to yes, to grow the film industry in Vietnam, but that's just one aspect. That's just
Yeah.
one leg of the overall if piece of the table. Like that's just one leg, right? So I think there's more of a proliferation, basically the rise of streamers and also the rise of international films. We're inspired by Parasite. We're inspired by so it's like also like Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia when it comes to all the ASEAN countries as a collective is very powerful group globally. And just from my work, I see a lot of not only Vietnamese filmmakers but also Filipino, Lao, Singaporean, you name it. Filmmakers who are very gifted. So it's just like and then like as ASEAN becomes more ASEAN, becomes more organized culturally, politically, and economically. I think that's like for East, that's like something that we can definitely um, build on as a foundation for what we want to do as well. So yeah, we see opportunities in that sense.
Yeah. What are
And
some
also
of
for
the
Vietnam, it's just like theatrically, it's still a burgeoning market, in the theatrical space. So yeah, we definitely want to use that to our advantage as well.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges that we face for the future?
COVID, I
Yeah.
mean, a pandemic, uh, different time zones. We're not in the same location. Everything's on Zoom. Um, but uh, yeah, I mean, that's like cultural cultural differences, tastes. Like it's like we don't. I mean, I personally don't want to be like the ugly American. Like this is how you should do it. That's not how it should. We are guests. We just want to support. And then for me, it's just like I just see it's more of a not as a Vietnamese American, but more as a Vietnamese. And I, for one, definitely, no matter what, I think at the end of the day, when we start a business, you want to make money and be sustainable, right? But
Yeah.
I'm really in it for the artistic merit and just endeavors to really kind of like find and provide opportunities for filmmakers of Vietnamese descent to kind of get that notice. And unfortunately, there is a game that you have to play when it comes to getting tastemakers involved and getting getting it seen by the right people. Getting but yeah, that's like one of my kind of like goals is to kind of foster kind of artistic, independently minded filmmakers from Vietnam and from the diaspora.
Yeah. You made an interesting statement that I just have to drill into a little bit here. You said we are guests. What do you mean by that?
I guess in the sense like of like because I'm not from Vietnam or not from Southeast Asia, but I'm big fans culturally and also um, of of work from these countries, and then yeah, I'm from Vietnam. I've been affinity Vietnam because I'm Vietnamese, right? But it's in the sense like like it's like we're guests in the sense like we have to. I mean, that's why uh, um, providing the support for Vietnamese filmmakers in Vietnam. Especially when it comes to sustainable films in the marketplace, in the domestic market. And I think it's like something that um, we can, uh, but yeah, at the same time, we can lend and lend support and provide input. But we have to listen to how things are done on the ground as well. You know, um, and yeah, I mean, like it's like again, like my cultural tastes are very different from like the like I mean at the same time like there are like like I love comic book sci-fi fans and there are lots of them in Vietnam and they're like a lot of them are my dearest friends too but I think at the same like it's no different from say like like it's like uh rom-coms. I'm not necessarily a big rom-com guy, but I see on a market level, like, like why they're popular and why they, appeal to a certain audience, So, but I'm a guest in that sphere, because I
Yeah.
feel like I understand that. And then, like, so like as a producer and executive, I can see those genres and I can see, okay, how do we get that, up and running? Because rom-coms are very popular in Vietnam, obviously.
Yeah.
But I would rather work with a local than than like a someone who comes in like, oh yeah, like I'm a huge fan of Pray Love or Pretty Women or like or My Best Friend's Wedding. I don't know why I wrote off three Julia Roberts movies, but regardless, like it's like like it's like yeah, but like the cultural nuances are definitely and like the localization of it. It's like I can't like I don't know that's why I think, but like I think it's like for for like a local filmmaker, that's their world, So I just want to provide the support to realize the vision of that filmmaker. That's what East should do, and that's what we're trying to do.
I I really love that distinction that we're guests, and the I really appreciate that because you don't often hear that sort of self awareness from people of Vietnamese, going back to the motherland, and we have to understand that we are guests. That's very it's a very true distinction. As much as we want to be part of the landscape, and as much as we really yearn to be authentic, and but we are guests, and we cannot many times we cannot impose what we think is, Vietnamese, because it's just not the case. And there's so many nuances to Vietnam. I mean, most of us don't speak the language proficiently at the point where we can really penetrate the thinking. And that's a big challenge to me. Right? It's a difficult.
Absolutely, absolutely. But like it's also like I mean like I mean, a lot of it is we're shooting the shit, right? Like, we actually have a track we call shooting the shit, right? Like, amongst our Easters and stuff like that. And like, hey, man, like opinions from like, for example, from Fancy Nay, from Lynn are very different from my opinions. Like, it's like,
Yeah,
what? And we go to these debates, and like all that stuff. But
night
it's
and
like,
day.
it's night and day, man. Like, it's like, uh, but it's like, but yeah, it is. It's definitely different. And I come from again an American, not only Western, but a very American. Also, I would say even like a Hawaii perspective, which is
Yeah,
very different
very different.
from say my cousin who is or even from who is from the Midwest. So there are like different levels of that.
One thing that I wanted to talk about with you is this idea of um, new wave, European disco. That's often, I don't know, is it mislabeled new wave? Because new wave in the '80s for Eurasia or new wave Depeche Mode, or The Cure, is very different from what new wave Euro disco is, right? Those terms often get mixed up, right? And I would love to talk about that sort of. We share that around the world as Vietnamese people at our generation. Um, can we talk a little bit about that?
It is, yeah, sure. I mean, like, yeah, it's all under the umbrella of new wave. But like, you're talking specifically of like modern
Modern
talking,
talking,
60 catch, right? Like,
Cowboys Blue.
yeah, Bad Boys Blue. Yeah, I mean, that's like Italo disco or Euro disco, right? Italian, and that's like, I mean, mostly primarily Italian and German, West German music producers who are just catching on to that new wave kind of sound, the synth
Yeah, Pet
sound, and
Shop
I think
Boys is
it's like
probably right in the middle of all of it.
sure, but like those are like those are like I would say the big boys, right, so to speak, right? But you had like Modern Talking and CC Catch, and like that's like that's like definitely the soundtrack of my growing up. My uncles, like or like and whatnot were listening to that in the 80s and 90s,
Around
right?
the
So
world, Vietnamese around the world was buying
not
it.
only not only not only Vietnamese, man, it was like it's Asian in general, Asian like Hong Kongers, Koreans, you name it, man. It was just like
Wow.
it's just very much like yeah. I mean, like you look at like other Asian Americans. There was that article that came out last week. It was like not in the Atlantic. I forgot it was like I forgot, but there's like why Asian Americans love of like from the '80s, especially were huge new wave fans. Like Bizarre Love Triangle is the anthem, so to speak,
Yeah.
right? So it's all kind of coupled from that. It's like just from that in that sense, like proliferated from especially that's how the beginnings of like Asia Entertainment and Paris by
First by
Night,
night.
all started as mixtapes, man. And then you had like like mixtapes that were like it's all that were like made and proliferated and like basically copied and sent around and like the local local Vietnamese markets and what have you, and Little Saigon and other communities around the world, Vietnamese communities around the world. It's no different, So
But why did it take hold? Why was there such a grip within the Vietnamese community around the world? What do you think is the thing that we all bonded? Why did we bond to that music?
uh, you know, like I think I mean that's I always think about that too. I mean, like even like for my parents or like my dad, like it's no different. Like why is cha cha music so big? Like
Yeah.
like the cha cha music or like or even like like I think part of it is like or you know what it is? Like I think I can only speak on Vietnam, but like like yeah yeah music, the French yeah yeah music in the '60s. Like you're thinking of France Gall, and you're thinking of like um or like it's for certain stuff Serge Gainsbourg, or like Christoph,
Yeah,
and
it's way
yeah,
after Edith Piaf,
and yeah, this is like the '60s and '70s.
yeah.
It's like yeah.
There's
A
a
lot of it
label.
was like
There's a label
yeah,
called Anna, that all the music
yeah,
you're describing.
yeah, but it's all yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
YEH, right? So it's it's very kind of the equivalent of like early Beatles,
Yeah,
but more innocent, more innocent, like it's like um um and then a lot of that sound kind of just kind of um morphed into like the like into the proliferation of like kind of like synthesizers and what
mhm,
have you, simple production, in that
yeah,
sense that you had like music producers were able to um I'm no different from like craft work to like it's like to like early hip hop, like it's yeah, they were able to like with the 808 808s and all that stuff. Like it's like they were able to produce their music in their basement, and like for the cheap, and
yeah,
yeah, so like yeah, so it's in like in I think a lot of it was like when it comes to erasure and uh you know the Cure or whatever, like it's like like that was all Pet Shop Boys. But you look at like but like other bands like groups like um Modern Talking uh or CC Catch, Bad Boys Blues, like they a lot of them were from Western Germany,
yeah,
and I think and like I think from the the former Soviet states, like like you're looking at like Czech Republic or like and what have you, like in our European countries where there's like pockets of Vietnamese communities. I think that it just took off, and then like like um or even in Paris, like Paris by Night, like for God's sake, like it's like a lot of these communities are just transported over to the to the to other communities in Australia and the U.S. and like just because and in Orange County, man, Little Saigon, that's like that was like that was the hotbed. I think that was the perfect kind of like primordial soup, so to speak, to for this type of sound to kind of like take off. And you had like high school kids, who were like having their DJ parties or house parties, you name it.
garage
Like
parties,
it's like
yeah,
garage parties, no different from like in Daly City, man. Like with the Filipino DJs, man. Like the garage parties were happening there too. We, like one of our producers in for Saigon Electric, he was he was a DJ in like high school and college, man. He would drive to like Orange. He was from LA, but he would drive to Orange County, or then he would drive to Reseda, or drive to up to NorCal. He would drive to like Riverside, just because he was a DJ, man, and he was just basically playing this type of music. And it's kind of like how it kind of built its groundswell and following, you know.
yeah. It's such a big part of our history. It's a
In a
huge
sense,
part.
it's like it's outsider music, you know. It's outsider music in the sense that you have like I mean mainstream MTV was basically glam rock, heavy metal, or
Yeah,
rap, and then that, of course it was super popular, but when you had like the Cure or when you had people like the Smiths who were different, why is Morrissey and the Smiths, why are they so popular with Mexicans?
hugely.
Like it's like
Yeah, in LA,
huge. It's like
huge.
yeah, yeah. So it's like I think in a way it's like kind of like this is like yeah, the sense of ownership. Like even the lyrics are like I mean like you think of like Italo disco. It's like the lyrics aren't deep, but they're fun, and
Yeah,
it's
they're
for like for
shallow.
house
Yeah,
yeah, but for house parties they're super fun, right? Like it's like they're like it's like they're bangers,
they,
like
they
in
still
the sense
have
like
they still have those parties in Orange County. I mean, it's a bunch of
exactly
old farts like us, but they still have them,
yeah
and people get dressed up and do their hair
yeah.
like the '80s, and
But Rob Smith, like for the Cure and something, or Morrissey, man, they were like they were outsiders, and I think in a sense like like that for the especially for the immigrant experience, I think that was kind of like there was there was connection. There was like, yeah, I get you, Rod. I get you,
Yeah, I think
man. Like,
that's really a
yeah,
key
like it's like
component to it. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. You know, if you're like hanging out in the parking lot, or like it's like just listen to music, or like
we own
these house
this.
parties. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like like it's like okay, yeah. If you're like Mission Control Arcade in Orange County, or or like drinking Zimas in like cemeteries, no different, man. Like it's like you know that was the soundtrack of a generation. And I think it's like I think that outsider aspect really kind of was key to that. Yeah.
you how many movies do you watch a year?
Like in the hundreds. Like I would say maybe one year I did like 500 something. Crazy,
It's insane. That's like
crazy like that. Yeah.
over a movie and a half every day.
Well, I mean, like movies come in different lengths, right? So
Yeah, but it's still
yeah.
an incredible amount of movies to watch, and then I know that you're very plugged in into TV too as well. You've watched all of the popular shows and stuff like that. What's your
Well, I
take?
mean,
Yeah,
like, but there's like, but like at the same time, like you can't keep up, and it's just too much stuff, man. It's just like when you're having like, especially well, at least in North America, like 500 TV series being produced a year. That's crazy, you
it's
know.
insane. Yeah,
Uh, yeah, yeah.
I want to know what your idea of all of these new shows like House of Ho, the Bling Empire. What's your take on it? We have representation on screen, but it might not be positive sometimes. It might be messy. What's your take on it?
Well, I mean, I'm not a reality show fan. Like, I don't watch. I never watched like kissing. Was it Keeping Up with the Kardashians,
Yeah,
or what's the other show? Like, yeah, like those
Housewives.
type of shows. Housewives. I have no idea. The Bachelor.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know any of that shit. So yeah. Honestly, like I try to give like Bling Empire a chance, but I just can't. I mean, I'm not. It's not my cup of tea. So I don't know. But and House of Ho. Like it's like I watched it. It's like it's interesting. I just have a thing with like reality shows. Like I think it's all staged anyway. So um, or at least producer influence, and that's true.
Yeah.
It's a fact. But
But
like it's
do
like
we need do we need
but
more
like
of
when
it?
it comes to I mean representation. I mean like it's like I think it's definitely capturing the sense of like I mean it's low hanging fruit because like Crazy Rich Asians is such a phenomenon. Like oh let's just make more Crazy Rich Asians. Like it's like there are a lot of different aspects of Asians and Asian Americans, especially. Like it's like
Yeah.
and like I come from a working class background, and you come from a working class background, like it's like
Yeah.
like it's like there's many facets, especially just in the Vietnamese community, like it's crazy, like it's like I think that's why in a sense that's why East is that's why we came up with East. It's because we want to see because there are 500 series being produced just in North America alone. And then there's a rise of streamers, and Netflix is in 192 countries. There's a lot of you're not making the Cosby Show. I mean, or you're not making some you're not making something where it's like it's something for everyone.
Yeah.
You're not diluting the content, so to speak. I think that's why authenticity is very important. You're making it for an engaged audience. It doesn't have to be a big audience, but when the business model for Netflix is to not only gain more subscribers but retain subscribers, make sure that on the end of the day, it's
Yeah.
basically they just want you to auto auto they auto have auto set auto payment on your credit card
Yeah.
for Netflix and just forget about it. They don't, it's like that's if they can do that, that's great. Then they can invest their $16 billion a year in original content to do that to basically retain, keep those subscribers. You know, and then with being in 190 countries, then like that means okay, great. We have to cater. We have to make content for Koreans for Korea. And they make content for Vietnamese for Vietnam, So it's like, and then for Vietnam, you're looking at 100 million people, 100 million people population, about to crack 100 million people, rising middle class. Half of the population's under 40 years old. It's a very young population. They watch their content online. So how do you capture that? So no different.
There's a lot of content out there, the proliferation of content. How does this play out for like the business side of things? I mean, with so many movies and TV shows, is the model sustainable?
I don't know. I mean, like it's all it's no different from like startups. Like the basically the Silicon Valley um, startups and whatnot. Is it sustainable? Because it's like because you're not essentially. I mean, it's like in the sense of economics 101. You're like, how do you? I mean, what are your widgets? Like it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, like it's like this is basically you're making in the sense like just ones and zeros, and it's out in the ether. It's not something tangible and physical. Like it's like like it's like here's
Good
the hammer
analogy.
you made.
Yeah.
Like it's like yeah. So and there's like and yeah. So and it's not basic. And in the same time, you look at the constant threat of like theaters. Like I mean, the pandemic doesn't help, but like
Yeah.
there's always been the streamers have always been disruptor. No different from say um VHS or DVDs as a disruptor, or 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 television in color as a disruptor, or television for that matter, as a
Yeah.
disruptor. So there's always the death knell for theaters, and like I don't know, it's like it's like I feel like we in this pandemic, it's kind of like if we ever hopefully we get this under control, and I think we will, like and or at least live with COVID as a kind of like just a just a part of everyday life in this globalized world. But I feel like once we get this under control and we can go back to restaurants or theaters or concerts, it's gonna be like the end of World War II, man. The end
Yeah.
of the Blitz. It's gonna be they're craving for that connection, human connection. You know, it's like they're craving for that, and I think they want to have that celebration. They want to go to concerts. They want to go to movie theaters. They want to go to restaurants, and I think that's gonna. If history is an indicator, that's what happened after World War II, and I think that's going to happen here.
Yeah, there's studies and books written about the massive expansion of economies right after the Spanish flu.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
Yeah,
the
exactly.
roaring 20s in the U.S. Do you
Yeah.
think that we will be consuming less Netflix and Amazon after COVID?
No, because again, I think it's just a part of life. I think even before COVID, people were binging.
Yeah.
So I think it's just just that's just part of that. Even binging was not in the lexicon, not in our everyday pop culture vernacular 10 years ago.
Yeah. Brand new thing.
Yeah, it's a brand new thing. Like it's like it's no different from like binging is like Netflix's model is like, oh, we're gonna put the entire season on, drop it on, so you can watch, so you can binge the entire time.
Yeah, yeah.
So like it's like so it's like so I think it's like no, it's not going away, and I think it's like as you see, like that's just it's you look at all these other streamers, all these multinationals are started their own streamers. Like what HBO Max is doing is totally disruptive. Like
Yeah.
their whole theatrical slate is also premiering on HBO Max the same day. It's crazy. Like it's like so it's like that's there's always going to be new. It's all about ones and zeros, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about bandwidth and ones and zeros. That's the thing. Like it's like. And also like like and connecting to 5G and all that stuff. Like it's like it's like and you look at even Netflix. You're looking like in other countries, developing countries. There's even like different tiered system of subscription systems where it's like okay, like mobile only. So it's like from standard def versus high def. It doesn't have
Wow.
to be 4K UHD. For India, where if you're watching your stuff on your phone, or in Vietnam, you don't necessarily have like a big screen 65-inch TV, but you're watching it on your motorbike on your mobile phone, like so on your smartphone, it's like that's yeah. So yeah, there's gonna be um yeah. So I think there's other. I think it's not gonna go away. It's not gonna go away. That's kind of like that's how we consume it. That's how we consume content every day. No matter like it's more about the medium or the format, the structure of storytelling is gonna change.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like it's TikTok. TikTok is like I mean TikTok is transformative. Not only when it comes to like having dance battles to some weekend song from the weekend or something, but it's like transformative politically. Like it's like you look at the ground game in Georgia, for
Yeah.
example, like like you're looking at like what Stacey Abrams and what like in their organizations, they're using TikTok to engage, to
Mobilize.
ignite and they mobilize. Like it's like young voters. Like that's incredible. Like looking at K-pop stands who are like, who are like, just like kind of like uh, trolling far right hashtags. It's like crazy. Like it's like and then like or no different from Reddit. What's happening with
GameStop.
AMC
Hmm.
and GameStop. Like you're looking at the like the kind of basically uh wreaking havoc in Wall Street, wreaking havoc on these hedge funds, and whatnot. So it's like, yeah, man, it's just like it's crazy. It's crazy. And I think
It's crazy.
that's just sort of like yeah.
Before the movie Avatar came out, I remember being a kid thinking about, one day we're just gonna like jump into a little pod and sort of plug in and be transported into different, you know, virtual reality worlds, and and it seems like Netflix and streamers probably have a long way to go, or not even a long way to go. They probably will end up going the route of creating virtual worlds and video games and content where we can just hop into our, quote unquote, our pods and just disappear for weeks, and probably have feeding tubes where we can just go for weeks on end or months on end and not have to engage.
That's I mean that's but we're already experiencing that. That's called the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah.
Like it's like and you're looking at like gaming. The gaming is like the game video games, man. It's like it's talk about
Immersive.
a huge industry. Like it's like you're looking at the most exciting storytelling is in gaming.
Yeah.
Um,
Beating out films,
it's
like by far sometimes.
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like you're looking at like The Last of Us 2 or Death Stranding, and like it's like what kind of controversy Cyberpunk 2077. Like it's like these are like event things. No different from like like the Avengers. But they are much more immersive in the sense that you are the protagonist, right?
Right.
And yeah, so it's like it's wreaking havoc on the auteur theory in a sense, like like it's like like it's like, but at the same time, like yeah, I mean we're already there, man, and I think it's like we just gotta. I mean, for VR or XR, the or XR, like it's like yeah, it's just like it's just the technology is gonna get up, like it's like it's not necessarily like okay, yeah, you can use it on your Google VR headset or like your Samsung headset, but it's got it's cumbersome where it heats up, overheats, to get too sweaty, you get dizzy, or how do you monetize it either too, like it's how
Yeah.
do you monetize it? It's like once you pass that threshold, then yeah, it's yeah, it probably will be like hooking, very much like a Minority Report or something like that. You're
Yeah.
hooking yourself up into a pod or something for Avatar,
God, the economics will change, but
Yeah.
there's still a beauty to our real life our sensory ability to kind of
Yeah,
like
I mean, you have that with AR, with Pokemon Go. AR is
yeah,
just like everyday life as well. So,
yeah,
anyway, go ahead.
yeah. I'm just I was gonna introduce this whole thing about you you walk a lot. I know that since the pandemic, we've had this contest. In our inner circle, we've had this contest of walking steps, and I think you're like killing everybody with averages of 17,000 steps a day. And um, tell me about that. Tell me what like motivates you to walk that much.
Oh, just to, first of all, for health, right? But it's
Yeah.
also because of the pandemic. It's, where you're working from home. It's like, it's like, oh, great. I can, I can just walk and be socially distant, and it's then like, you clear your head, you listen to podcasts, audiobooks, Audible, and what have you. But at the same time, it's like, again, it's AR in the sense that it's the
Mhm.
gamification of it all. It's like really like, okay, I gotta reach this goal, and
I
like
gotta
it's
beat my
like
boys.
I gotta beat my boys, and like exactly, and like or you have all these challenges, That's why, in a sense, like Peloton is like so popular,
Yeah.
Like it's like it's like yeah,
Gamifying the
everything's
hive mind.
gamified with a high mind, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We talked about. I mean, we don't get into it much, but like game theory of it all, the whole game theory of everything, like it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, no different from what's happening in Wall Street, with you know, um, it's a gamification of it all, and I think it's like intrigued by that, So, um, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Anderson, I'm very appreciative of all the work that you've done within the community, all the work that you've done to help just somebody like me throughout my journey in just my personal life, my development and everything. I hope that next year, or actually this year, when the pandemic is lifted and things are getting better, that we can revisit some of the topics that we talked about, or talk about the new projects that we have on our slate. This was a very, the time went by really quick for me, and I hope to do this again very soon. Thank you so much.
yeah. I mean, like one of the sad thing is like, I think one of the main reasons why we started East is because that, I mean, this is uh, uh, basically a time of opportunity. I mean, basically, when you have these initiatives of diversity, across the board, you have like a sense like you don't have to make films or TV or what have you or content that appeals to someone in Peoria. Like it's like
Yeah.
just like it's honestly, and it also like to be honest, like just to leverage the white liberal guilt of like of like having our masters provide these opportunities to like diversify the gatekeeper, diversify artists, and like diversify the distribution platforms, diversify the pipelines. Like it's like and also honestly to globalize, and it's the globalization of entertainment. Like who would have thought that a Spanish language show called Money Heist would be one of the biggest shows in the world, or even Terrace House, for example. Like these are examples. Like um, because of that, there's opportunities. Like at the end of the day, it's like I mean, like even the way we view stuff on Netflix is like everything, even if it's English, if it's American, everyone watches it. A lot of people watch it with subtitles already. You know,
Yeah.
like it's like if you're watching like Bling Empire, you're watching with subtitles. Some people watch it at like 1.5 times the speed.
Yeah.
It's like yeah, because they want to get through it all and all that stuff. Like the way we even consume content's changing. So in the end of the day, it doesn't have to be made for the mainstream. It's just like it's the success. It's like you just gotta it's very more so in the sense of niche audiences. Like I think it's like if it's just authentic to that audience, and it's a success. And also it's like it doesn't have to make huge opening weekend numbers either. Just as long as you know Netflix is sustaining itself by making sure that people forget to like, take off the auto like auto pay for your
Yeah.
Netflix subscription, then yeah, they need to make content.
I,
They need
I
to yeah.
I think we're going to live long enough. I mean, in a very few short years, to see something come out of Vietnam like Money Heist. I think it's right around the corner for our our industry and our niche.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're looking at K dramas, like you're looking at that are now super popular on Netflix. It's kind of crossed over the mainstream. And you have like dude, even like anime. Like anime has now become like a huge moneymaker now. It's always been, but I mean, at least now, and you're looking at like Michael B. Jordan, right? Like
Yeah.
one of the biggest stars in America. He's a huge fan of Naruto and like an anime. Like he started his own, company to produce anime. Like it's like you're looking at like So are you looking at like yeah,
So
or K
random, Michael
dramas
B.
like
Jordan.
yes,
Yeah, it's
yeah, man,
so random.
yeah. It's just no, the barriers are completely broken down. Like you're looking at again, it's like geeks will inherit the world.
Well,
You're looking at people don't have to watch Dragon Ball or Avatar: The Last Airbender or Sailor Moon in like in secret. They can be out and proud about it in a sense,
yeah, yeah.
and it's fine. It's fine. It's great. Like it's like, yeah, man. It is the Asian century too. It is the Asian century. So yeah, we've got to ride that. We got to ride that wave.
Amazing time. Well, I appreciate it, and thanks again, Anderson. And we'll catch up soon on the podcast.
All right, man.
All right, I'll talk
Take
to
care.
you very soon. All right.
Aloha.